Hello, and welcome to a quick overview of crisis response planning. This is a quick follow up to the social media policy video that I just did. Hopefully, this will be a little bit shorter. I know the last one went like 13 minutes. I try to keep these less than that on average, but let's go ahead and dig in. Um, Crisis response planning is a general term, general phrase, I guess, for any crisis that happens within a company, and we're going to talk about it as it relates to social media specifically. Now, if you think about like the larger ambiguous idea of a crisis response plan or crisis response planning, social media is a facet of that. It's not the whole thing. However, we have entered a time when just about any major company crisis is going to bleed over into social media. As a result, you often are going to need to have a social media crisis response plan in place for just about any crisis that happens in general. And when I say crisis, I mean not just negative PR. That's not always really a crisis, and a lot of times it's kind of expected where you can really prepare for it. I'm talking about a crisis, something that quickly happens. Um, and I'm saying like if let's I've been a part of this a couple of times when the maybe the company puts something out on social media that is not that is not supposed to be on the company's social media page, or as a follow up to the social media policy video, maybe it's something that it's a company secret that was supposed to remain confidential that leaked online, or it could be something that was caught on video that a third party captured. This happens more in B2B or B2C companies where we've all seen it, right? Somebody spits in your food at a fast food restaurant, or a lot of times it's kind of related to that, where it's employee conduct that just looks really bad on the brand in general. So our social media crisis response plan, first of all, needs to have who is that team? Who is a part of this? Who is the person that is going to approve of the messages that happen? Who's kind of the leader on this? Who's going to actually be crafting the messaging, and who all needs to be involved when it comes to that quick response? When we look at social media crisis response, it needs to be fast. And so you need to have a plan in place to quickly address things that happen. Again, this isn't everything negative. If you own a restaurant, you get a negative review. That's not I mean, it's probably not going to be a crisis. You want to have a plan for that to manage your online reputation, which is a whole separate discussion. But I wouldn't call it a crisis. When we look at a flow chart of this, you really have three steps, and this is with any communications crisis. First, you want to assess what's happening. Two, you want to evaluate it, and then you want to respond. This is a good kind of communication strategy in general for anything that's written towards the brand, even if it's something overwhelmingly positive. Like you can see this, you still want to respond. You still want to do something to help amplify it or thank the company or the person posting it. You know, anytime that there is something said about your brand online, your brand should probably be positioned to do something with it. You don't want to just ignore it, at least at first. Obviously, there are some corporations that are so big, enterprise level, that you're just not going to have the opportunity to respond to everything. However, those companies have much more detailed and intricate flowcharts here that have all of the different criteria necessary to analyze all of these various messages and determine which ones warrant a response. This is just a general flowchart I wanted to show, nothing crazy. But you will see under the negative side, there's a lot more that goes into that. You know, if you're assessing and it's positive, it's like, oh, should we respond? Yes or no? The end. If it's neutral or if it's negative, then there's a lot more that go into it. Now, there are a ton of examples of social media crises that we could share that I would love to talk about, but we just don't really have the time here. So we're just going to go through, you know, what is the identification process like? One, social media listening is pretty important. I would say on the low end, really small businesses don't need to do all that, don't need to have like official listening streams, using like Hootsuite or Sprout, which have more in-depth social media listening capabilities, but they're also pretty expensive. If it's a smaller company and it's like 3 or 4 people, that should just be monitoring the channels on a regular basis. Um, you also want to set the parameters. What constitutes a parameter, and or what constitutes a crisis, and then also, are you seeing any changes in like website traffic, in social media engagements, in followers, good or bad? Um, the prime example I have is what happened with Disney Plus after the controversial decision to pull Jimmy Fallon temporarily off the air. They lost over 1 million subscribers to Disney Plus, and so that was a true crisis. Obviously, on social media, there were so many people sharing so many comments and opinions on all sides, and Disney was, I mean, this was a lot larger than social media, but social media was a big part of this. And they had to really make a decision. Okay, first off, organizationally, what are we going to do? And then how's this going to trickle down to all of the other elements? And you talk about data spikes. That's pretty much as big of a data spike as you can get, is a loss of over 1 million paying subscribers to your big, shiny new product. So when it comes time to respond, the number one thing is you got to act fast. I mentioned this earlier. That is critical. And when you do, you also, you need to use all means to communicate using all of your platforms and channels. But the really important thing is to never delete a negative comment. By doing that, that is only going to lead to more negative comments. Oh, somebody deleted me. And then you are stuck in this vicious circle of people that continually respond. And it becomes then not a crisis of the brand, but a crisis of social media, which you don't want to happen. The worst thing that can happen when responding to a crisis online is to make it suddenly about your response. The response is important, and it can make or break this crisis. It can either put it out and make it easy, or it can make it way worse. So you never want to delete a negative comment, but you also want to validate. You want to share people's concerns with them, and really, like, oh, I understand you're upset. Totally like, yep, that's completely valid what you're saying. It's really kind of like a sales and also an argumentative tactic. Is you don't want to invalidate people's feelings and what they're thinking. Not saying you want to admit to everything, if it's something that you didn't actually do, for example, you don't want to admit to that, but you never want to tell people they should be feeling. And that really goes hand in hand with this last piece, which is you want to be authentic and empathetic. You don't want to fight back. You don't want to send back your own jabs, even though that has become popular in today's society online. It's still not something that brands want to engage with because it's not expected. We are at a time where certain brands are held to a higher standard than other figures online. And as a result, what certain people might be able to get away with on the internet, on social media, is just not, it's just held to a different standard than how a lot of companies are. Especially with companies, there's a lot at stake. Getting canceled this day and age, it can be really, really drastic. It can lead to really bad results for businesses, and some of them just don't do not recover. So you want to make sure that you continue to validate, be authentic and empathetic, but also you want to acknowledge the situation that's at hand. You don't want to completely ignore it and set it to the side. Obviously, don't argue and insult your customers. And another important thing is don't let your current scheduled regularly. Let me just step back. You don't want your regularly scheduled programming to continue. A lot of brands, they schedule social media posts days or weeks in advance, and a lot of them are either about them or about third party content. And when they do that, and then a crisis happens, that's definitely not something you want to happen. Where you say you put out a social media crisis response statement at 9 a.m. And then at 9:15, you forgot that you had a post scheduled promoting the new product line. And suddenly that looks insensitive. It looks like you don't know what's going on within your own social media walls. Um, and it really can kind of kill any momentum that this new product line could potentially have. So, really the last slide here is all of this comes back to brand communication with consumers. We are at a point in time where brands can no longer just post their content and go away. We're at a time where brands are expected to respond back to consumers, to leave comments, to reply to comments, and sometimes to either take larger organizational action that relates to really the general dynamics of the conversation online. 89% of messages are ignored by brands. Think about that. That's a huge number. Obviously, a lot of those are ignored because you have a company like Coca-Cola that gets hundreds and hundreds per day. Can't expect them to respond to everything. However, if you think about this, 76% of consumers expect a reply within 24 hours on social media. As what sort I should say, as unrealistic as that those expectations might be, they still have them. And so you want to think about not necessarily responding to every single message and every single post, but you want to have a plan to act fast and respond to everybody in general pretty quickly. Within 24 hours is a pretty good rule of thumb, but overall, you just want to make sure that your brand is active, alert, aware of the conversation that's being had so that you can properly respond to a social media crisis. The worst thing you can do in a social media crisis is make it worse. Social media crises often are offshoots of large organizational problems that happen. And so making it even worse and making it about social media, that's what you want to avoid. If anything, you want to be able to quell the detractors. You want to be able to mitigate the potential repercussions online. And you want to make sure that social media is a place where your brand can not just respond and support people, but also you want it to be a place where customers and consumers at large believe that they can go to have their voices heard and to get the latest updates from a company. After all, that is really what social media has become about. It needs to be an authentic and empathetic place, just like company responses to social media crises. So that'll do it for this. Right at about 13 minutes again. But for questions, please feel free to reach out. And I think we all know what many examples of social media crises can be. Feel free to check those out and what those responses are. And until next time, thank you for watching.